Well, hello, this is Adam, and welcome back to Rare Classic Cars. Today, a topic that I thought would be interesting for all of you, and it doesn't necessarily relate to a classic car, but it's something that we all go through at least every couple of years, whether on the used side or the new side, and that's buying a vehicle. And I thought I would talk a little bit about what are some strategies to get the best deal on a new car when you're working with a car dealer. So my experience in this comes from working in the industry for a number of years for one of the big three, particularly on the sales and incentive side. So I'll share with you some tips and tricks that I would advise you to employ as you search for that new vehicle, some of which may be effective during these times, some of which may admittedly be not, because a lot of dealers right now just have relatively low inventory of product because of all the various supply chain issues. But those issues are starting to really abate, and we're starting to return to at least a bit more normal inventory levels on dealership lots. But it's going to still take some time before I would say industry normal levels return, maybe even another year or so. Nonetheless, I think it's good for us to discuss what are some potentially winning strategies here. And I've got my handy dandy chalkboard and some chicken scratches, which I will read to each of you. So the first item on the chalkboard is plan to call multiple dealers. Don't just settle on one dealer. You want to make sure that you're making phone calls. You can certainly stop into the dealership, but that's going to take time to wait for a salesperson and to work up different things. I would advise just calling them and talking to a salesperson. And you want to call multiple dealers. Ideally, you really want to find a dealership that has a lot of brands under one showroom. Like if it's a GM dealer, you want a dealership that has a Chevrolet, a Buick, a GMC franchise, so that you can pick from a larger range of cars and the salespeople can pick from a large range of vehicles, because the incentives by vehicle are different. They're not necessarily the same. They may be the same, let's say on Chevrolet Silverados, but GMC Sierras may have a totally different set of incentives. So you don't want to restrict yourself to small dealerships that may, as an example, be a standalone Chevrolet franchise, ideally. So plan to call multiple dealers. I would say at least kind of three-ish, maybe four-ish. And you want to probably skew towards larger dealerships because they're going to have less overhead that they have to defray per every sale of a vehicle. So start with that. I think that's a good important point. The next point is number two, check to see who has inventory of vehicles. Now dealers, when you check their websites, they'll post what their inventory is of particular models, and you can see if they have a ton of a particular vehicle in stock or they have relatively few in stock. And if they have relatively few in stock, you're not going to get a great deal. So you might as well just recalibrate your mind into looking and shopping for vehicles where the stock is plentiful. As an example, right now for the domestic cars companies, pickup trucks are becoming more numerous. The inventories are returning to more normal levels. You'll get a really good deal on a pickup truck, relatively speaking, if you're looking for one right now. If you want a full-size SUV like a Chevrolet Tahoe or a Yukon or an Expedition, Navigator, Escalade, Durango, you kind of name it. In general, the inventories are really low. So you're not going to get nearly as good of a deal. So just prepare yourself and look to see which dealers have high amounts of inventory, because chances are that means that they're going to be willing to deal. And you can see that right on their website. It'll say that they have this amount of vehicles in stock typically, or you can ask them when you call them, how many do you have in stock? How many do you have to choose from? It's a very fair question to ask. Third, very important point. Make sure that you call at month end or around month end. You want to call ideally, I would say, about 3 days before the month ends. And bear in mind that dealership sales calendars don't always end on the calendar ending day of the month. So as an example, let's say for December, the month of December, the sales calendar actually ends January 2nd. It carries through the holiday, and all the incentives are going to be the same through January 2nd. So month end is actually January 2nd, not December 31st. And this is a question you can ask the salesperson when you talk to them as well. What is your sales month end? How good are these incentives? When do they expire? And that's an answer that they'll be able to tell you, and that'll be a uniform answer for all dealers under that brand. So if it's a Toyota dealer, as an example, all Toyota dealers are going to have the same sales month. Same with GM, Ford, etc. So it gives you a little bit of intel on when is that month end really happening. And that is so important because dealers don't just make money on every vehicle sale that they obviously sell to a customer like you, but often there are very significant monies that they will get if they hit a particular sales target for the month or their quota. And you really want to be the last person who puts the dealer over their quota because they're going to be very desperate for that particular sale. And often what will happen is the original equipment manufacturers or OEMs will then provide incentive money and dollars to the dealer all the way retro back to the first car they sold in the month if they hit their quota. So you can be an extremely profitable customer for the dealers if you're that customer who gives them a high likelihood of putting them over that quota. And that's why you want to go at month end. At the start of the month, dealers aren't really going to deal all that much because they don't know how their month is going to shape out. And you also want to call multiple dealers because you don't know who's going to be hungry to meet their quota. Some dealers may have already surpassed it and know they're in the money and not necessarily care, and really just the term in the industry would be hold for gross. In other words, they're trying to make more money on each vehicle sale because they've already met their quota. Other dealers may not be in that position. So you can get very different payment points talking to two different dealers for that reason and that reason alone. So again, you're calling multiple dealers. You want to call them about 2, 3, 4 days out from the end of the month and make sure you know what the end of the month is. If the calendar end of the month is on a Saturday or Sunday, generally speaking, the sales incentive calendar will end the following Monday. So as an example, if November 30th were to fall on a Saturday, then the sales calendar wouldn't end on November 30th. It'd actually end on December 2nd, which would be a Monday. Just making a date up there for an example purposes. So again, that's super important. Shop at month end. Then we get into number 4, which is really realize that get the different payment points for the vehicle, and you want to call and always ask when you discuss a deal with a dealer, ask for payments in terms of $0 down. That helps you normalize across dealers what the payment points are going to be. Because some dealers will have a particular deal where it's $1,000 down at this dealer, $2,000 down at this dealer, and it's hard to make sense of which monthly payment is going to be better. Just always say, I'm looking for the cheapest pickup that you have with these options. I want to put no money down. Give me your most favorable lease term and your most favorable finance term. And put it at the ball in their court. Don't dictate that you want a 36-month lease or a 24-month lease or a 60-month payment or a 72-month payment on financing if you don't have to. Let them be empowered to help you in that. Give them that lever, because sometimes the incentives will be different in terms of the incentive money the dealer receives from manufacturers depending upon the term. So you want them to almost pick what the best payment point is. Sometimes for leases, as an example, 36-month lease is very typical. A 39-month lease may have a more favorable payment point for whatever reason, and it would work just as well for you. So allow them that flexibility when you talk. So think about how I just phrased that. I'm calling a couple of days out before the end of the month, and I'm saying, I want the cheapest, whatever the vehicle is, with these options. So let's say you really want the heated steering wheel and the heated seats. I want the cheapest car with a heated steering wheel and a heated seats, and I want you to give me $0 down payments for leasing and financing and whatever the best terms are and most advantageous to me. That's how you want to phrase the conversation. Not, I really want this red Toyota RAV4 that's on your dealer lot, and what's your best point? You've already compressed the set of options that the dealer has to work with. And the worst case would be, I really want that red Toyota RAV4 and I want to have it on a 36-month lease payment. you've hamstrung them at that point. If you said, give me the cheapest RAV4 with these options, and you tell me what the most favorable term is, you put yourself in a much better scenario. So the other piece of this is realize that you can negotiate not only the new vehicle price, but also your trade-in or accessories on the vehicle. So you can, let's say you want all-weather floor mats in the cars that come with it. You can say, as you get closer to making a deal, that can be something that you talk about. Or if it's a pickup truck, you want a bed liner or something else. Those are all things that you can negotiate. Or the trade-in, you should feel as though you're empowered to negotiate the value of the trade-in. You can say, if the dealer only wants to give you $5,000 for your trade-in, I'm not willing to take less than $6,000 as an example. So you could be aggressive on each of these dimensions, and depending upon who in the car dealership needs to meet their sales quota for the month, you might get more favorable terms in one place or another. Some dealers may give you a great deal on your used car and a high trade-in because they need the used cars in their lots to sell to customers. Some may give you a crappy deal, but those ones who give you a crappy deal might give you a great deal on, let's say, the vehicle itself, the new car that you're buying. So it's a whole kind of game of figuring out who needs what to meet what target and allowing them options in order to help you, candidly. The next piece of advice here is wait to see who calls back at the end of the month. So you've made these calls 2, 3, 4 days out from the end of the month. You ask for the payment points with nothing down and the most favorable and advantageous payments. Then what you need to do is plan to just kind of get off the phone, hang up the phone once you get your information. Just say, I'll think about it. See who calls you back in another day or couple days. And those are the dealers who are going to be most hungry for the deal. Some dealers are not going to call you back at all. Some are going to call you repeatedly as the month end comes to a close. And you know at that point, they've signaled to you that they want the sale. So now you're turning the tables and you're able to become more aggressive in terms of your negotiating with them. You have the power, not them. So again, you want to make sure that you kind of plan to say, I'll think about it. I'll talk to you later. Thank you for your assistance. And that's true if you go in store as well. You really should plan to walk away if you go in store the first time. Just keep saying, I'm sorry, this doesn't work for me. I need a lower payment point, or I need more on my trade-in. And get to the point where they keep coming down and you just walk away. Because then you at least know where they were. And you can start at that point when they call you back and try to get your business. So that's a very important one. You need to wait to see who calls you back, because then they signal if they need your sale or not. And then you really want to make sure that you close the deal. At this point, you know which dealers have the best payments, you know who's called you back. You then can go into the dealership and start negotiating, whether it's the new car price or the used car price or the accessories that you want. You can negotiate all those dimensions. And then you want to close the deal with that dealer. And after you close the deal, generally what happens is you sign some paperwork, and then the salesperson will say, okay, I need you to go talk to my finance manager. And then you're going to be taken into a different office where generally somebody different is going to talk you through a whole series of products that they're going to try to sell. Everything from nitrogen in the tires to window tinting to insurance products to extended warranties. And in general, this is where dealers, really good dealers, make a ton of money on what are called F&I products, financing and insurance products. And again, that's when you hear that term, I need you to go talk to my finance manager. Just be prepared for that conversation. That's what they're going to try to sell you. And they'll try to sell you a lot of it. And I would just say pick the ones that really are well suited to you and plan that your default is that you don't want anything. And you might, as an example, they might say, offer you window tinting, particularly in the South. That's something that's very common in dealers. And if they give you a good price on it, okay, well then that's good. But don't assume that everything in that meeting is going to be a good deal, because in general, it may not be. And that's an important part of where, as I said, dealers make money. So then once you've gotten through that meeting, you're kind of home free and you're just signing paperwork and you'll take delivery of the car, assuming your credit clears and all of that. So let me just summarize again. If you're buying a new car, you want to make sure that you're calling a fair number of dealers, at least several. In general, bias towards the larger dealers with lots of brands under one rooftop. You want to do so close to the end of the month, 3-4 days out. You want to provide the dealer with the most options that they can have to get you what you want. Don't be specific on vehicles if you don't have to be, or lease payment terms or financing payment terms. Tell them you want the most favorable to you and let them work that. Again, phrasing things in terms of, I want this red car on the lot in a 36-month lease. You've hamstrung them in order to provide you the best deal. If you tell them instead, I want the cheapest car with this content, and you pick what the appropriate lease term is, and always ask for, I want the payments with $0 down, so you can compare across all dealers. That's really key. You got all that information, you hang up or you walk out, and then you see who calls you back a couple days before the month end, remembering, as I said, that the dealer sales calendar month end may differ from the calendar month end. And then you figure out who really gives you the best deal. You negotiate. You should plan on negotiating at least 3 rounds, especially if you're in the dealer. Whatever the initial volley is, you should plan to make sure that you kick that back and say, no, that's not going to work for me. So if they tell you, all right, I got a payment of $500 on this vehicle, you can just say, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. And you can lowball them. You say, really, I need something closer to $350. That's where I need to be. I'm sorry, $500 doesn't work for me. And then the salesperson will come back and then they'll put another offer in front of you, generally with a little X to try to get you to sign. And then I would decline them again. Usually after about the 3rd time, they're starting to get relatively thin in terms of meat on the bone, but you can then just walk away and see if they call you back in another day or so as the month end gets closer. And then you know that they're very desperate for the sale, and you start negotiating from whatever the last point was that you left off with them, and push them a little harder and see if you can then close the deal. And then the last step is just recognizing that after you negotiate the new vehicle sales price, recognize that you're going to be dragged into the F&I office with the finance manager who's going to sell you a bunch of products, everything from extended warranty to insurance to nitrogen in the tires to window tinting to accessories. And generally plan to decline those things. That's where dealerships make tons of money, unless you see something that's attractive and really makes sense to you and you've competitively priced it. So those are some key steps to think about when you're buying a new car, and I hope that's helpful to you. Let me know if it is. And again, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.